On to the first presentation this evening, which is 11 Urquhart Street in Coburg, DED 46/16.
Thank you. This matter is in relation to 11 Urquhart Street, Coburg, which is an amendment to an existing permit for 7 stories. The site is located on the northern side of Urquhart Street with an overall area of approximately 2,300 square metres, comprising 11 and 13 Urquhart Street. There's some history to the site, that being that planning permit number 2011/12637 was issued in 2012 by the Minister. A subsequent permit amendment was issued in 2013, also by the Minister for Planning. Heritage Victoria has issued a permit that was consistent with these approvals for a 7-storey building. Heritage Victoria is also considering a permit application consistent with this amendment proposal. Council has formally written to Heritage Victoria advising that the proposal is inconsistent with directions in the master plan. Heritage Victoria are yet to make a decision on their application. This proposal is an amendment. Council's consideration is confined to the changes proposed. These include an 8-storey building with a height of 28.1 metres, an increase to be 148 dwellings, a decrease in car parking to 120 car spaces, removal of offices, and removal of the site at 13 Urquhart Street from this permit approval. Council's consideration also includes changes to the appearance of the building. In terms of process, 19 objections have been received to this amendment application. A planning information and discussion meeting was held on the 23rd of May 2016 with 14 attendees, including with council officers and representatives of the applicant. Prior to the meeting, the applicant lodged a failure and the matter will be heard by VCAT, as council did not make a decision within the 60 days from the supply of information received on the 22nd of February 2016. It's also worth noting that their application was referred to the Director of Public Transport and Vic Roads, who have no objection to the proposal. Council's Development Advisor also has not raised concern with the reduction of car parking as detailed at pages 14 and 15 of the officer's report. Key objector issues include impact on heritage, height and visual impact, car parking and traffic, and the map on screen identifies the location of some of the objectors. The officer report recommends the council's position at VCAT be that no planning permit should issue, for the reasons set out at pages 3 and 4 of the report, in essence that the additional height does not accord with the policy that seeks additional benefits to the community, and also that the proposed building does not accord with the directions of the master plan, and that it's non-compliance with the Moreland Apartment Design Code.
Thank you. Are there any objectors in relation to this application or people who wish to speak in relation to this? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening. My name's Larry DeCarter and I object to this amendment. One of the reasons is that the proposed building doesn't blend in with the historic bluestone wall in front of it, and it's going to obscure the historic buildings behind it as seen from street level because of its height. The form of the building isn't sympathetic with the architecture of the surrounding historic buildings, and it contains so many apartments and potentially new residents that it's going to create problems associated with overdensity. And these are going to impact negatively on existing residents of the area. Light pollution is going to become a new phenomenon. The present situation, where there's only subdued lighting that highlights the historic walls, is going to be overwhelmed by the light coming from the apartment windows above the wall height. Owing to the increased size and scope of the proposal, the inconvenience, dust, mud, noise during the construction period from trucks and excavators and other machinery is only going to increase compared to the previous one. The road closures, lane narrowing and other traffic management tools to facilitate construction is going to create further congestion on an already busy road. The reduction in car parking bays is going to encourage the use of nearby streets by residents or visitors to the proposed building. The building's going to overshadow the child mining centre at certain times of the day. And the curved design of the building and the brightly coloured facade is going to contrast sharply with the muted and sombre appearance of the bluestone walls. It's going to make the entire complex look like a theme park instead of an important heritage site. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your submission. Are there any further speakers? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening, councillors, Chair. My objection is a matter of record, but I'd just like to highlight a couple of things, and I'd like to draw this committee's attention to specifically what I refer to as context real versus theoretical. And I say as follows. The demand and use of accommodation, including multi-storey apartments and related services, including car parking in recent years, have substantially changed from what or when the estate planning scheme was first conceived. And numbers and attributes were given to its various elements and practices adopted by its practitioners and VCAT. Therefore, typical lazy discounting of car parking needs against statutory requirements is no longer applicable. As an example, on the 25th of the 11th, 2014, I refer to the fire of the 21-storey Lacrosse apartment building in the Docklands and the MFB post-incident analysis report, public document, found a number of very serious failures and concerns that should serve to awaken and caution the regulators and practitioners as to the relevance of the state planning scheme as it stands, including real car parking demands and services. And I quote from that report, section 6.4, high occupancy rates, MFB comment as follows: the occupancy of many apartments appeared to be in excess of what would normally be expected in a two-storey apartment and what a two-bedroom apartment is designed for. During investigations, it was identified that some apartments had sleeping arrangements for up to 8 people. Now, these changes are driven by federal and state government policies. We just need to accept that, acknowledge that, and deal with it, rather than sit back and assume that what's happened in the past decade still applies. It doesn't apply. And that is from the MFB. Further, I think I just want to highlight the issue of the car parking. And there's a clear conflict of interest because council stands to profit from a reduction in car parking. On the one hand, we have the MFB, which says we've got up to 8 people occupying a 2-bedroom apartment, or each room. And on the other hand, we've got the applicant asking for a reduction in car parking. Now, I say this council, this committee, should use this material and ask for an increase in car parking. Unlike most of the other Australian standards that I'm familiar with and that we apply in the construction and design industry, the car parking provisions in the state planning scheme are used to discount. But clearly, we now have a reality that does not allow for that. And the council, as far as I'm aware, has no authority to raid apartments and find out and control how many people are sleeping in bedrooms. But it does have the authority here to recognise what another authority, i.e. the Metropolitan Fire Brigade, has found, and that is that We don't need one car parking space per unit. We need much more.
Sorry to interrupt, I'm conscious of the time, so please
Okay, I've just
summarise
about
your
done it.
arguments.
But my comments are a matter of public record and you have my objection. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Thank you. I welcome the planner's recommendation to refuse the amendment to the planning permit issued by the planning minister, I think in 2009, for an 8-floor development with 3 basement levels at 11 or 13, I'm not sure, Urquhart Street. I attended the 2-hour planning information and discussion meeting on the 23rd of May with representatives of the applicant, town planners and objectors. We were then told that already this has been appealed to VCAT because of a failure to make a decision within 60 days. It's a big decision to make and we understood that. My objection includes the reduction in setbacks resulting in the building being more or less shoehorned onto a small site and fears of damage being done to the heritage significant parameter bluestone walls. The statement of grounds for the VCAT appeal, by the way, were due in last Friday, so most of us have made our statements of grounds and elaborated on our criticisms and objections in those. My other concerns include the application being contrary to the Pentridge Village Urban Guidelines Master Plan, which was the creation of so-called experts paid for by the owners, so they're going against what their own experts are saying. It exceeds the number of stories set. It has a different form and mass to that which was proposed in the master plan, and the new the new form and mass is also still unacceptable. It proposes a uniform residential use of 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings instead of a range of uses, and it contributes very little to the public realm. Everything is cut off and it's made private. I found that it was contrary, or my interpretation was it's contrary to clause 2207 of the Moreland planning scheme in the number of car spaces proposed. There's been a reduction in the car spaces from the original permit to this one. The landscaping is entirely inadequate. There's a little space for it and there's no landscaping virtually except in the front setback. The stormwater is not environmentally sustainable. It is a domineering design. It disregards the current neighbourhood character. It seems to me that the colour scheme is leopard-like. It's white with black on it, and it's going to completely dominate Holy Trinity, which is a heritage building. It will dominate G Division, and it will dominate the wall, which is also of primary heritage significance. I can't see any environmental sustainability in it and no low-cost housing options at all. So I hope that the council will go with the council's recommendation and refuse this amendment to the planning permit.
Great, thank you very much. Is there yes, please come forward.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Rob Stansell. I also commend the council in its rejection of this recommendation. I would like to just dwell a little bit on the car parking side of it, which I know has been sort of said that it's okay within the context of that report that I read online anyway. And what my concern is that we're looking at one building in isolation here when we talk about the parking and car traffic issues of Urquhart Street. And I think as a council we need to start looking a little bit broader than that now, because we know that this whole area is up for huge redevelopment potential. Now, if you're going to give an okay for one 8-storey and then another one and then suddenly there's this, multiplier effect. So I would just urge you to think seriously about the consequences of the traffic. And of course, I've represented the Coburg Primary School at these meetings, the Coburg Council meetings, Moreland Council meetings, and you know, there are issues related to that which really need to be addressed, and it's going to have a serious impact on traffic movement when they start looking at the people movement that is going to increase because of the increasing size of the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another speaker in relation to this application?
Yes.
Please come forward. Yes, please come forward. Yeah.
I'm Helen Deans from Glencan Avenue in Coburg, and I thank you also for your stance, and I also endorse all of the comments that have been made already. The one extra thing I'd like to add to the conversation is, in the Good Weekend on the weekend, they just happened to have a little analysis of public transport use in 1950, comparing it to recent times. And in 1950, the average number of trips on public transport per person in Melbourne was 370. Now, by 2013, it was down to 121. So obviously, people are making a lot less trips per person on public transport. So really, it's all the other issues as well, but thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? No. Is there a representative for the applicant present? No. Okay. He may be making his submissions at VCAT then. In that case, if there's any questions from councillors, Councillor Kavanagh? No questions?
No.
No questions?
I'm happy
Councillor
to.
Kavanagh?
Can I move?
Yes.
Can I move the recommendation on page 3, 4, with just a very slight amendment, just in the first sentence, it's just for grammar's sakes, to be honest, that no planning permit, instead of issued, be issued for the amendment. All right? So no planning permit be issued
Thank you,
for the
Councillor
amendment.
Kavanagh.
And if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Thank you, Councillor Tavnos.
Okay, as you can see, this is an amendment, and I know you understand the process pretty well. Council did not approve the application originally. We weren't the responsible authority at that stage, and the Minister approved the original application. So because it's an application to seek an amendment to that permit, we can only deal with the issues that are around the amendment, not the substantive application itself. So there are a few, and so it's pleasing that we actually have an opportunity to express our view, if it only be on the amendment, but at least it's a chance to express our view. A couple of things. Number one, yes, the master plan, which once again was approved by, I think, Minister Madden at that stage, says not 7 stories. The master plan says between 5 and 7 stories. Between 5 and 7 stories, very clearly. Whereas this amendment is seeking 8 stories. And of course, they could have, to be in keeping with the amendment, they could have submitted an application originally of only 5 stories, or not only, but a 5-storey application, and that would have been in keeping with the amendment. So not only are they seeking to go above the amendment, but they're seeking to go above the maximum height of the amendment, not the prescribed height. That's number one. And also the setbacks themselves. We've produced a very important document which we refer to as MATSI, which talks about apartment living. If we look at the ranges of setbacks, this variation is looking at the changing the rear boundary from between 0.3 metres as much as 5.66 metres. In other words, and to the side boundaries as much as 2.88 metres. That's very substantial changes to what the permit already has. So the extra story, greater visual bulk. I know some people have commented about the actual architectural value of the application. Because we're only looking at the amendment itself, we can't really take that into consideration, but as a personal view, I tend to agree with everything that was said there. It doesn't seem to be in keeping with the precinct at all, and surprisingly in 2012 Heritage Victoria viewed that it was. I'm not sure how, but anyway, as far as the amendment goes, I'm looking forward to councillors voicing our opinion at VCAT. And can I say that, yes, the 60 days has exhausted, but it is important, the decision tonight, because the decision tonight is whether council marches, if you like, with the objectors in their opinion that this is not fit for approval, or if council was to approve it tonight, then if you like, the objectors would be on their own and we would be marching side by side with the applicant. So even though the decision is already out of, the first part of the decision is already out of council's hand, the decision tonight is still an important decision because it decides what we place in our applications to VCAT for them to make the decision.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Tappamans?
Thank you. And I echo the sentiments by Councillor Kavanagh, particularly that last one in regards to the importance of the decision. That we know that this is going to VCAT, but we do expect that VCAT hear loud and clearly the view of the responsible authority, which is council, because that view has been formulated after consultation with the community as well. And it was great to hear some submissions tonight. I just wanted to add that it's not just the impact on, well, it is the impact on the heritage fabric, it is the heights, it is all of that that's been mentioned, but it's also the loss of some office space, which they're seeking through this amendment. There's a reason why council officers and council has insisted on big developments having some office space so we can create jobs in our municipality, and that's just been removed completely. So from 1,543 square metres, in the current proposal, they're recommending 0 square metres. So that's not really an acceptable outcome for such a big development. We do want to see some small commercial or office space available so we can actually create some jobs in our municipality as well. So I just wanted to emphasise that tonight, but I don't think they've responded well at all to any of the master plans in regards to this application, and it should be rejected. And I encourage residents who are submitting that VCAT to definitely attend and make sure that they raise their voice quite loudly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tappamans. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I'd like to speak in favour of the resolution before us as well. I think it's a very good outcome, and also like to thank all the residents who did make submissions and that are also going to make submissions at the VCAT, so that strengthens our case as well. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to emphasise, I guess, that the increase in bulk of this building does detract quite significantly from the historical buildings, like in G Division, and that it does fail in its ESD principles or in its sustainable management provisions, and also in the affordable housing provisions. These are some of the things that council is really looking to embrace, and it's a direction that we want to go into. So the fact that we're able to speak on behalf of council's future visions and also residents' future visions of this area is really great. And I guess, like, just looking at the table on page 6 of our agenda, just talking to the car parking issues, how they're wanting to increase the dwelling size to 18 and then reduce the car spaces to 25. This will ultimately have a flow-on effect to council, because it does trigger that there will be traffic issues, and then it's up to council in the council organisation area to then come up with mitigation issues to actions in order to mitigate those issues. So I think if we can get that up front with the planning section to have enough car parking as part of the permits, the better. Certainly don't want to increase traffic issues, because we all know that congestion is far and beyond enough now. So I congratulate everyone who's been part of this process, and look forward to hearing the VCAT result.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I'll put Councillor Kavanagh's motion to the vote now. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And I'll now pass to the officer to outline the legal process from here.
The Urban Planning Committee has resolved to support the Office of Recommendation that Council's position at VCAT be that no amendment to the planning permit be issued. Objectors who have joined as a party to the VCAT proceeding through lodging statement of grounds have been advised about the future hearing dates at VCAT.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to the second application for this evening, which is 197 The Avenue, Coburg, planning permit application MPS 2015-124, DED 4716. And when the officers are ready, they'll give an outline of the presentation.
Second one. Yep.
Thank you. So this is an application for 3 double-storey dwellings at 197 The Avenue in Coburg. Just to describe the site a little bit, it's in a neighbourhood residential zone and it's affected by an environmental significance overlay due to the proximity to the Merri Creek. An interim heritage overlay has also recently been introduced that affects a bluestone outbuilding on the property. And the photos on the screen are just a couple of the photos of the subject site and surrounds. So it's proposed to construct 3 new double-storey dwellings on the land, and that's across lots 4 and 5. As you can see from this image here, there's 4 existing dwellings that are being retained along with an area of common property, and then 3 double-storey dwellings are situated across lots 4 and 5 through there, and that will result in the demolition of 1 dwelling, which doesn't require a permit. And then the bluestone outbuilding that's affected by a heritage overlay is located approximately there on that image. So the application attracted 13 objections. These objections raised numerous issues. Some of the key issues related to the removal of vegetation, demolition of a bluestone outbuilding of heritage significance, the impact on neighbourhood character, adverse amenity impacts, and car parking and traffic. A planning information and discussion meeting was held in November 2015 and was attended by council officers, 2 objectors and the permit applicant. Following the planning information and discussion meeting and a council or officer assessment of the application, the key issues were considered to be the removal of vegetation, the demolition of the bluestone outbuilding, neighbourhood character and landscaping, as they relate to the objectives of the neighbourhood residential zone, and overshadowing of 195 The Avenue, which does not comply with Clause 55 of the Moreland Planning Scheme. In relation to neighbourhood character, it was considered that the development does not represent minimal change or contribute to a lower density landscape character. The lack of side setbacks results in insufficient space for new landscaping, and the siting and design of dwelling 3, which has a 2-storey form with limited articulation or setbacks to the boundary, does not respond to the open rear yard character of the area. Another key issue was the removal of vegetation. So because the site is within an environmental significance overlay, a permit is required to remove vegetation, and 4 mature trees are proposed to be removed to accommodate the development. The largest of those trees is a lemon-scented gum, which is the one that I've pictured up there. So this removal of this tree was a key issue for objectors, and you can see on the left-hand side that's a view of the tree within the site, and in the top right you can see the tree from the creek corridor, so it does contribute to that, the character of the creek corridor. The applicant supplied an arborist report as part of the application, which supported the removal of all of the trees on the land that they were proposing to remove. Notably, the lemon-scented gum was recommended for removal due to a high hazard risk from limb drop. Council engaged an independent arborist to assess risk associated with the lemon-scented gum. This report concluded that pruning of the tree would bring the tree to within an acceptable level of risk. Now, notwithstanding the question of risk, the trees provide a strong contribution to the landscape character of the creek corridor, and it's considered that the removal to accommodate the development is contrary to the objectives of the environmental significance overlay. The last sort of key issue is in relation to the bluestone outbuilding. So its removal was raised as an issue by objectors because the building is a remnant of the Glengyle mansion, which previously existed in this area. So this building was not protected by a heritage overlay when the application was lodged. However, as a result of the concerns raised by the objector, council engaged a firm of heritage experts to undertake an assessment of the property. The report concluded that the bluestone outbuilding is of local heritage significance
and was recommended that a heritage overlay be applied to protect the building from demolition. So as a result of the recommendations of that report, interim heritage controls have been granted until 2018, and demolition of the outbuilding is considered to result in the loss of contributory heritage fabric that is of local heritage significance. So the subject site is located within a neighbourhood residential zone where planning policy seeks to achieve a lower density green leafy landscape character. Furthermore, the site is constrained by the location of mature vegetation and the outbuilding, which is of heritage significance. So as a result of these issues, City Development recommends that a notice of refusal to grant a permit be issued subject to the grounds contained on page 38 of the agenda.
Thank you. Are there any members from the gallery who wish to speak in relation to this application? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to talk to the committee. My name is Harold Sundergaard, and I live in 114 The Grove, which is neighbouring this property. I earlier lodged an objection to the proposed development, and I will speak again in favour of the recommended notice of refusal. My primary concern is the proposed removal of significant mature vegetation from the site. The entire site is covered by environmental significance overlays, and in particular the ESO1, Schedule 1 Merri Creek and Environs. We have already seen removal of significant vegetation from the property when 3 townhouses were built on the site. That was less than 10 metres from the creek. Removal of the remaining vegetation seems clearly incompatible with the objectives of the ESO Schedule 1 Merri Creek and Environs. As mentioned, of particular value is that large and beautiful lemon-scented gum. This is a magnificent tree, and I have previously submitted photos to show the high visibility from every direction, including from the creek corridor. The tree has exceptional habitat value for marsupials and for native birds. It is frequented by the local kookaburras. Together with other trees on the property, it provides a green corridor for wildlife, and it improves the local microclimate well beyond the boundaries of 197 The Avenue. That property is very close to the Merri Creek, as you'll see from the map. I've lived near this creek for long enough that I've seen several severe floodings. They have reached the southeast corner of 197 The Avenue. After even slightly heavy rain, the footpath between the creek and the property is flooded, as it happened just on Saturday. On such occasions, the edge of the creek is just 6 metres away from the property. I remain concerned about the landslip hazard. Just a few years ago, there was a serious landslip 50 metres further down the creek near the Beaumont Street development. Indeed, part of the property is covered by an erosion overlay. And I mention this because the erosion preventing role of large native trees is well understood. But it is not given much air in the documents that are before the committee. The lemon-scented gum has a root system which would reach far in under the 3 townhouses that are there already. And these are sitting on top of a steep slope immediately adjacent to the creek. The tree's ability to transpire large amounts of water and to mitigate buildup of water under those houses should not be underestimated. Lastly, can I say I belong to the Butler Street Sustainability Group. We're local residents who work together with council to improve the vegetation along our section of the Merri Creek. And over the last 3 years, we have been planting and nursing native vegetation in the immediate vicinity of 197 The Avenue. I urge you not to undermine our joint work to prevent erosion and to make the area more livable for humans as well as for wildlife.
Thank you. Thank you for those important points and for your work in relation to the creek. Now, are there any other speakers who wish to speak against this? Please come forward.
Hi, I'm Bridget Costello. I live at 195 The Avenue. So our initial concern was the overshadowing, of course, along the perimeter of our property. We're also concerned at the proposed overdevelopment of a small, narrow suburban street. But far more significantly, we are concerned about the removal of the lemon scented gum, which is a magnificent tree that harbours kookaburras, which is an absolute joy to have in the inner city. And they have been singing less lately, and we're concerned that the removal of the tree would see them go forever. And I'm also very much concerned about the proposed removal of the bluestone outbuilding, which in a city or a country with so little built history would be very sad to see removed. There's also a bluestone cottage on the property, which has not been deemed to be of heritage value, but I do wonder whether that was the original bluestone cottage on the property that was built as the Glengyle Mansion, because the Richard Broome history of the property talks about an original bluestone cottage that was lived in by the man who built Glengyle Mansion. So I know that the property is somewhat diminished, or the cottage is somewhat diminished by its subsequent transformation, but it is a really interesting part of Coburg, and I'd like to see it given proper consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another speaker? Yes, please come forward.
Marilyn Moore from Coburg. I congratulate the planner who wrote the very eloquent and clear council report. I support the council planner's recommendation of a refusal for this planning permit application. If a planning permit issues, an existing bluestone outbuilding and cottage will be demolished and 4 trees cut down for the construction of 3 attached dwellings. This planning permit application has prompted extensive research into the existing but hitherto forgotten bluestone outbuilding and cottage. I believe they are the last remaining remnant buildings located on land owned and lived in by 3 historically significant men in Victorian history, not just Coburg history, but Victorian history. This land was owned by William Westgarth, and we know Westgarth Road, we know Westgarth suburb, but we didn't know, and I didn't until recently, that he was a Coburg resident. Unfortunately, we haven't remembered that in any way or acknowledged it, which is very sad. He was a progressive Scottish merchant, financier, Port Phillip politician and historian, and he lived in a cottage on this land from 1845 to 54. So that's during the gold rushes he left. Historian Geoffrey Searle judges Westgarth to have been Melbourne's second most outstanding citizen after Faulkner, John Pascoe Faulkner. So he was very eminent. He knew everyone. He knew Georgiana McRae. She came to the property. She drew the property. So it's very important. He lived in a, so I've said that. So he then, going on from that, from 54 to 1873, a David Moore occupied the property, and he called it Moorfield. He was Sydney-born, very unusual, a merchant, Sydney-born, grazier, Victorian politician, and a one-time Victorian government Minister of Lands. So he was no shrinking violet either. And he constructed on that land a 2-storey mansion of 12 rooms in 1855, later extended to 14 rooms. It was a magnificent mansion with a magnificent garden. And I think some of those trees that have been lost were probably dated from that garden, and we may have some just left. Then Duncan McGregor, a livestock breeder and Queensland explorer, lived there until 1905, and he extended the house to 27 rooms. So it got bigger and bigger and more impressive. It was bluestone, double-storey, slate-roofed, and it was a magnificent design. Unfortunately, fire destroyed the bluestone mansion in 1916, but not the outbuilding. And I suggest from my studies that the smaller 5-room house survives on that land today, but in a very different form to what it had been. Inside, you can see the remnants of it. The demolition of both of these buildings would obviously adversely impact the historical and social significance of the site, as well as its character and appearance. Approving the demolition of these rare buildings would be contemptuous of and detrimental to the history of Moreland, to Coburg, as well as Victoria, I believe. It would make a mockery of the then Mayor, hope and inspiration, or his intention that Moreland would become Melbourne's bluestone city. Yeah.
That's what you pointed to.
I think it would really make a mockery of it, because we want our municipality to celebrate its bluestone history. The proposed 3 double-storey dwellings, an extension to an existing dwelling, are located on a site where minimal change is envisaged in the planning scheme. However, the proposal will constitute, well, according to what I see, a significant change to the neighbourhood character of the area, and already people have said that. The proposed new development will not contribute to the lower density, open, green and leafy character which that zone envisages. The proposed 3 attached dwellings will leave no side setback space for the planting of canopy or screening trees, and inadequate space elsewhere for the planting of large replacement trees, including the magnificent lemon-scented gum which we've seen today, which would need to be cut down for the dwellings to be constructed. The removal of the 4 large trees will also be detrimental to the scenic quality and visual character of the historic Merri Creek corridor on which this particular mansion and estate was located. So I strongly urge you to support the recommendation and vote in favour of the refusal to this planning permit. And I speak tonight just not for myself. I have been asked for by a former mayor of the city of Coburg, Pauline Taylor, to also say that she is very interested still in the history of Coburg. She's very interested in this particular building, and she also does not want it demolished.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the history you provided as well. A lot of research went into that and it was very well put to council. Are there any further speakers in relation to this? No? Is there a representative for the applicant present? Yes, please come forward.
I'm the owner of the property. Thank you for letting me speak on behalf of the application. Can I be allowed to distribute a
Yes,
handout?
of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you're the owner of the property? Yeah, okay, thank you.
And you.
Yep, thanks for coming tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll go straight into the 2 open issues mentioned in the last page of the Council's report's conclusions, awaiting resolution. I believe if we read the report, most of these issues have already been complied with or resolved. The 2 items, open items are 1, the removal of the 4 trees, 2, the retention of the small bluestone shed, which is 2 meters by 3 meters. The shed can be retained and accommodated into the proposed development, so we don't have a problem with the shed. With respect to the 4 trees, we can retain the 2 Kurrajong trees on the boundary. They have a less safety risk, but the gum tree is a safety hazard, and we would like that to be removed. It is not registered as a significant tree. It is not an indigenous tree, but a native of Queensland. The recommendation for the removal of all 4 trees is made in our arborist report by Dr. Peter Yao. Dr. Yao is a level 10 arborist who has a doctorate and extensive experience. He was a council arborist for Melbourne City for 20 years. He was a lecturer and an external examiner for Melbourne Uni for 30 years. Council arborist Stephen Williams first agreed with Dr. Yao for the removal of the 3 trees. On the 7th of October, Stephen advised, "I have read Dr. Yao's report. I support the removal of tree number 1, which is the gum tree, due to its history of limb loss, dead branches, and sparse canopy." His advice was expressed at the council meeting on the 12th of November. For some unknown reason, Alex English reversed this decision. He advised on the 23rd of November 2015 that following Brett and my visit to 197 The Avenue, Open Space are reversing the referral as follows. We do not support the removal of tree number 1 because this is a significant tree. Now, I'd like to present some facts for consideration. All 4 trees have outlived their life expectancy. B. Lemon-scented gums suffer from sudden limb drop syndrome, which has not been considered by the council arborist and the open space planner in this instance. Therefore, pruning is not going to eliminate the risk. There are more than 30 trees that were more than 10 meters height removed next to the creek on the boundary of my block. I could not obtain permit details from the council for the removal of these trees. Now you can see the gum tree. That's why now you can see the gum tree from a small section of the footpath next to the creek. I'd also like to table a VCAT case number 2337, Bow versus Bayside, for the removal of 4 healthy lemon-scented gum trees on private land with an environmental overlay. This was objected to by the Bayside Council. Member Semino advised, "I am satisfied that the removal of the lemon-scented gum trees is justified. I have formed this conclusion primarily because of the proximity of the trees to the dwelling. While I accept that the risk of limb drop can be reduced through pruning, I have not been persuaded that this is sufficient to outweigh my concern about the proximity of the trees to the dwelling and their location within the area actively used as secluded private open space." I would also like to list some trees that are in my block. I have 4 magnolia trees over 10 meters height, 8 elm trees over 10 meters height, 2 thick clumps of bamboo over 6 meters, 14 neighbors begone over 2 meters height, 1 Canadian maple 2 meters, 50 meters of hedging English box, jasmine, wisteria, and 3 bougainvilleas, 5 camellias, 10 Japanese maples, and over 40 other shrubs and plants in the small blocks where I belong. Now, if you look at the back between my block and the creek, there was also 2 weeks ago, another 10 trees have been removed. These were all more than 10 feet high. I have also listed some concerns regarding the handling of this application and also some other accidents and issues in the media, newspapers, Herald Sun, and there were 3 other similar cases that I couldn't table today and VCAT where the member had ordered the removal of the sea for safety reasons. The main request is for me to remove the lemon-scented gum tree, which is a safety hazard.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from councillors for
Could I ask the applicant a question?
Sure.
In your document that you've submitted, you mentioned Stephen Williams. Right? and you say, and I quote, "I have read Dr. Yale's report. I support the removal of tree number 1, gum tree, due to its history of limb loss, dead branches and sparse canopy." Was that a verbal report or was that placed in writing by Stephen?
It has been, I requested the minutes of the meeting.
Yes, please come forward to the
Yeah,
lectern for the benefit of those at home.
I requested because my town planner attended the meeting, I couldn't.
Yeah.
And he expressed to me there was this decision
You
expressed
don't
at
have
the meeting.
You don't
So,
have that in writing, though?
yes, I have it in writing.
Those words?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from councillors?
Maybe just of the, I don't know if the officers can answer this one, but it's in regard to council getting the arborist to have a look at the application and the tree on site. And if Steve and the first arborist went out to site and did the assessment, is it like a physical assessment and then the next time Stephen and Alex went out together and did another reassessment, or what was the process behind the assessments from council's arborists?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
If they can answer. I realise it's in another department.
I can answer that question. So in terms of the process that happened, Stephen Williams undertook an initial assessment of the application. He went out on site and did an inspection of the tree and found the canopy to be quite sparse, so it aligned with the advice in Dr. Yale's report regarding the health of the tree. So the fact that it was maybe not quite as healthy as it could be. But then following the objectors raising concerns, our arborist undertook a second inspection, and that occurred some months later. And the advice to us was that the health of the tree had improved. And I've got a second report from our arborist, which basically shows some aerial imagery that details how the health of the tree and the canopy increases and decreases in terms of its sparsity sort of over time. So that was their reason put to us for the change in position.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No? Is there a recommendation from councillors?
I'm happy to move the officer recommendation on page 38 and 39. And you have a second, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Thompson?
Okay. First of all, can I thank the objectors for their eloquence and their detail that they've gone into tonight. And I also meant to thank the objector from the previous one. It's not often you come to the Urban Planning Committee and you learn different things about the area, so it's been an informative night as well. A couple of points. Number one, and this is a more general point first of all, you'll notice that council has, at council's cost, in other words the ratepayers' cost, has produced their own arborist report and has produced their own heritage report. Right? This alludes to one thing that I raise very often about how low our planning application fees are for applications. In other words, in every year it costs council around, well, the last 12 months, around $2.8 million more to run the planning department than what we receive in planning applications. And so what that means is that every ratepayer is subsidising the development industry, right? And in fact, if you work it out on our rate basis, I think it's something like $150 of your rates. Every rate assessment is being used to subsidise the development industry. Usually for development we don't want, right? But that's the first point. So, and the planning application fees haven't risen for over 14 years. And they're a state government, and we cannot rise them. So when you look at our budget that was passed a couple of weeks ago, you'll see that one area where there's no increases is in planning fees. In fact, there's plenty. So that's really disappointing, and it's something that I think we have to continue to take up with the state government. Now, talking more generally, more specifically about this application, look, I actually think not only is it very important to protect the vegetation on this property, but also I think it's generally an overdevelopment of the site. I really feel so. And I feel as if the application, from what I can see, doesn't give due recognition to its position in our municipality, so close to the Merri-Creek corridor, and also at the end of the avenue, which is one of our more historic streets within Moreland. And so I'm very pleased that the officers have recommended refusal, because I actually, if they had been recommending approval, I can tell you now I would have been asking for an alternative recommendation, and I'm pleased that we're on the same page, because I do think that this application is not worthy of approval and therefore should be refused. And I do think that it is very important that we do everything we can to keep particularly the Levin Centre to come. And I know they were talking about the health of the tree itself. It amazes me, it's probably been there, I think we were thinking maybe 140 years. It's interesting that it's in the time of the application that it's unhealthy. But I'm sure for the previous 135 years we haven't had any concerns about the health of that particular tree. And yes, I know they do tend to drop limbs, but we know that. We know that the gum trees drop limbs. You know, that's expected as a gum tree, and you make precautions around that. So I would be loath to approve anything that would see the removal of that tree, and I also think more generally that it is an overdevelopment on the site.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Thompson?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to support the resolution before the committee tonight to notice to refuse the grant for this permit, and also, yes, to thank the submitters that have come in tonight. You can feel the passion and the eloquence behind the retention of vegetation. The site has an environmental significance overlay for a reason. We're very close to one of our most prized natural assets, the Merri-Creek. And I'd also encourage Harold and his group to submit and partake in a street tree planting plan that's going on in council at the moment in another area. It would be interesting or very beneficial to have your group's input into that street tree planting plan. And also just to sort of highlight the significance, like after the objectives and after the planning and information discussion sessions, the issues that were raised by the submitters, the bluestone outbuilding, which I believe from a heritage assessment that we did is like a garden, could be a garden building, so that speaks well to the vegetation that's on the site. And also about the vegetation and wanting to keep that well intact, and that council did then go and do further assessment to sort of appease council's issues if we had missed anything. So I commend that council went and did that extra work, and now that we have an interim heritage overlay on the outbuilding, and also that the arborist report came back in favour of keeping and retaining the tree. Certainly in other areas of council, we are wanting to increase the canopy coverage and increase the life and health of our trees in the municipality. So when we get applications like this coming to us, we certainly do look at those in the broader context as well. So thank you very much to all the submitters, and also thank you to the council officers for the work around this.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Tapanos, do you wish to speak?
Look, I think it's been said. I echoed the sentiments of my fellow councillors. I won't repeat them, but I just wanted to thank the residents for their work, and particularly the resident who did make council aware of the bluestone outbuilding. It was something that had been missed through our numerous heritage studies, but I guess working together we are able to identify those things, and the council will act quickly, as it has in this case, to secure an interim overlay until we fully put the outbuildings into a heritage overlay in the next round, I guess. So just thank you in regards to that. I do believe more could actually be done on this site to actually get a better development, which doesn't have such a big footprint and retains all of the trees. There's always an element of risk. Having read the report, read the assessments, that's an element of risk I'm willing to accept. Of course, it does need to be pruned and looked after and maintained, but I reckon after doing that, the tree should remain, and I don't think it should be removed at all.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. I'll now put Councillor Kavanagh's motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried, and I'll pass to the officer to outline the legal process from here.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. So the Urban Planning Committee has determined to issue a notice of refusal to grant a planning permit subject to the grounds contained within the recommendation. Following the issue of the refusal, the applicant and objectors will receive a copy. The applicant then has 60 days to seek a review at the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. Should the applicant seek a review of the decision, all objectors will be served a copy of this review and can join as a party to the VCAT proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to 522 Lygon Street, Brunswick East, DED 4816, MPS 2016-100. And when the officer's ready, we'll go through an outline of the report.
So this is an application for the sale and consumption of liquor associated with a tavern and a shop and display of business identification signage at number 52 Lygon Street in Brunswick East. Subject site is 99 square metres in floor area of the building. To the back is a lean-to garage and loading area. The existing building is the white building with the blue and yellow trim. It's an existing commercial building with frontage to Lygon Street, but it also has rear vehicle access to Eddy Street. It's previously used as a shop and is currently vacant. So the site's in blue at the top. It's in the commercial 1 zone. It's also affected by a heritage overlay and is located within the Brunswick Activity Centre. So the proposals for the sale and consumption of liquor for a shop and a tavern, operating from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week, a maximum of 30 patrons on site at any one time. No buildings and works except for signage is proposed on the site. The applicants confirmed that the refurbishment of the facade referred to in the elevations relates to cleaning of windows only. The land's also located within the parking overlay, where parking provision under this overlay is based on leasable floor area of a building. This application does not increase the existing floor space, so therefore doesn't trigger any car parking requirement for reduction. There's also no planning permit requirement under the commercial 1 zone to use the site as a tavern or a shop. So 16 objections were received, 15 are shown on the map, and 1 objector is off the map in Coburg. The main objector concerns, which came up in the objections, was noise, impact to car parking, footpath trading, and cumulative impact of existing licensed venues in the area, including noise, litter, and graffiti. So the plans up there show the red line plan, which is essentially encompassing the internal of the building and not the loading bay to the rear. The bottom elevation shows the facade of the building with the signage proposed. Following the receipt of the objections and the completion of advertising, a planning and discussion meeting was held on the 16th of May, attended by council officers, the applicant and objectors. So the recommendation is to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the proposal, subject to conditions requiring the patron number to be restricted to a maximum of 30. Sale and consumption of liquor must only occur between the hours of 11 a.m. and 9 p.m. and background music only is played on the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the gallery who wish to speak in relation to this application? Yes, please come forward.
My name's Lyle Stebbing, and I represent the North East Brunswick Residents Responsible Development Group, and I'm speaking on behalf of about 28 people, residents, businesses and employees around the area. Where I'm not expressing an objection, I'm expressing some concerns about the impact of this on the area. And it's not simply areas to the east, it's areas to the north, where a lot of people, like myself, live. We're worried about the possible impact of noise from music. I'll explain why that's a worry later, and patrons on surrounding houses. We're also concerned about what effect street trading will have on the area. I know that I've just seen the permit, the application now. I tried to find it a week ago on the website, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Although it says no street trading, we can assume there will be street drinking on the pavement. And we're worried about this because it's a very dangerous corner regarding traffic. It's actually very close to the corner of Albion Street that people here who know about, and it's a narrow footpath. Also, there are already 3 bars in quite a short strip of Lygon Street North, and so we felt that the Planning Committee needs to be very cognisant of the fact that the surrounding streets, east and north, are primarily residential areas. Why I'm concerned, why we're concerned, is because of our experiences of the problems that can arise with bars in that area. And that's specifically in relation to the troubles we continue to face with the neighbouring bar, Whole Lot of Love, and which Moreland City Council has failed to resolve after 2 years, 3 years of complaints from residents and police interventions. Over that time, we've had to put up with loud noise pollution from live music till midnight, noise that penetrates my double-glazed windows and makes neighbours' crockery rattle on their shelves. We've put up with broken glass on the pavement from smashed bottles, with hoonish behaviour in Eddy Street as patrons get into their cars, and with a threat to a neighbour and myself from an intimidating person employed at the front door when I told him that the door should be kept closed due to an agreement with the council. Moreland City Council and its Environmental Health section have received frequent verbal assurances from the manager of Whole Lot of Love that noise will be reduced through improved acoustics inside and keeping the door shut. Exactly what I informed the security guy. This hasn't happened. The manager makes promises to the council's officers, then ignores them. Things quieten down for 2 weeks, then the noise increases again on the weekend. The place is simply a public nuisance, and this means that our rights to a peaceful and safe environment have been overridden. And so we wanted to remind Moreland City Council that the area is largely residential, although it's in its commercial strip. And it's not just a thoroughfare for cars travelling north to Preston and Coburg, and that the Planning Committee should be protecting residents' rights. It's very worrying to us that the previous permit was granted by the Planning Committee without considering the impact of noise on residents, without determining the volume, and without determining whether live or recorded music would be played. Now, I can see in the application that condition has been imposed in writing, but we have been frightened that a similar permit will be granted, or that even if the conditions are put in writing, that it will be ignored, like the manager of Whole Lot of Love continues to ignore the agreements he makes with council's officers. So we would like to insist that certain guarantees will be built into this permit. One has already been inserted. So we want these inserted so that the bar won't add to the impact, the existing impact of Whole Lot of Love. A condition that noise will be kept to a minimum and not emanate into surrounding streets, that people's crockery won't shake in their shelves, and a condition that the area on the pavement will be kept clean and safe. That's not in the application, I know. So, as I said, we're not making a definite objection at this stage, but we're hoping that you will be aware of these concerns when you make your decision, and that the application is read very carefully so that it can't that these kind of conditions that I'm looking for can't be sidestepped. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers in relation to... Yes, please come forward.
Tim Glanville, I'm an objector and a resident who lives close by to the affected site. We have three concerns. The first is noise, and I'd just like to endorse everything that Lyle has said. I note the clause 4 of the proposed resolution of the committee. However, we're cautious about this because of our experience with the adjoining bar, which is right next door, where there were also conditions, strict conditions with regard to noise, which have not been complied with. And as Mr. Stebbing says, the noise from the adjoining bar is extreme, very distressing to nearby residents. There have been many complaints to council officials, but the problem continues and has not been rectified. We concede that this is probably a different kettle of fish, but we would like to be assured that the conditions with regard to noise will be complied with. Our second concern is about trading on the street and the condition of the street. As I'm sure councillors will be aware, this is a very dangerous and problematical corner. The footpath in Lygon Street, in fact, narrows considerably right outside the proposed site. Now, we note that in the officer's report it says there won't be trading on the street, but in the application there is at least one reference to trading into the street. So we would like to be quite sure that there will be no trading on the street or into the street or people drinking on the street. Apart from anything else, if that were to happen, it will be extremely dangerous. Another problem we have with the adjoining bar is continuous, especially on the weekends, broken glass left on the street. In this area recently, there are quite a few young families, new babies in fact, which there haven't been before, and some of the mothers have expressed concern to me about the broken glass that they find on the street, especially on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Now, the final point that I would like to raise concerns the renovation of the Lygon Street facade. Now, the diagram which is on the screen at the moment, particularly relating to the parapet, does come from the report, but I could find no other reference to the renovation of the facade in the officer's report. Is there one that I'm missing?
There's no renovations to the facade other than the cleaning of windows.
No, the applicant, certainly at the meeting with the officers, which you both attended, said that they would be renovating the facade, including the parapet.
I think we'll leave questions until the end, so go
Right.
on with your presentation.
Well, we attended the meeting with the officers and with the applicants who assured us that they would be renovating the facade. The facade at the moment is in an extremely dilapidated condition. It has been inappropriately painted. The facade of the parapet of this building, plus the adjoining shop, which is a pair, is in an interwar tapestry brick. The parapet is very attractive, as you can see from the adjoining shop. At the officers' meeting, which we attended, the applicants assured us that they would renovate the facade, including the parapet, that they would clean the parapet, and that in particular they would not use destructive methods such as sandblasting on the parapet, which would completely destroy the heritage nature of these buildings. So we would like the committee to note that that is going to take place. If the officers won't confirm that that's what the applicants did say at our meeting, there are a number of people here who will confirm what I say.
Councillors can ask questions after. Thank you for your presentation. Are there any further speakers in relation to this? Yes? You're for the applicant. If there's no further speakers against the application, then please come forward.
Chair, councillors, officers. My name's Andrew Gray. I'm a town planning consultant. I'm acting for the applicant. Just like to give a little bit of background about who the applicant is. The applicant is a business called Rewine, and Rewine are an existing business that operates at both the Melbourne, Queen Victoria markets and the Preston markets. And what Rewine do is that they source grapes, they make wine themselves, and they sell wine in barrels that people come to. They have the wine stored in barrels, and people come to their stalls at the market and they refill their bottles from whatever wine that they wish to purchase from the store. So it's a very sustainable business. It has loyal customers. There's people who've been coming back there for over 10 years to refill bottles, and it makes a very fine product. And what Rewine want to do on this site is to set up a permanent base. And what's proposed, as you show on the plans there, is that around the side of the building there will be storage for large wine casks, barrels. And what will happen at this premises is that people will come in and they again can buy wine in the manner that they can buy at the moment at the markets and take it away with them. In addition to that, the people at Rewine do want to have a small associated tavern, so people can have a glass of wine, have some cheese or something of that nature at the premises. So it's really it's not a tavern. It's really a sort of an ancillary tavern to the main purpose of the premises, which is to sell wine in that manner. And so we say it's a very modest proposal. We're only talking about 30 persons, and the operation of the tavern is only going to operate at the same time as the sale of the wine in the premises. So the 11 p.m. to 9 p.m. hours. So very low key. There's no live music proposed. We understand concerns of the residents about what happens to a whole lot of love. We don't know personally, but from what they said at the meeting, there is an issue there. That is a live music venue. It is a very different kettle of fish to our proposal, where we're seeking to only have background music for people who are having a glass of wine. We say that this is a good location for this use in the major activity centre in a commercial 1 zone, and we say it'll have minimal impacts on the amenity of the area. Just in terms of some questions that were the matters that were raised in relation to this application by the residents. In terms of the facade, acknowledge that at the meeting there was a discussion about the refurbishment of the facade, which is currently painted, and there was an indication given by my clients that that would be something that they would do. Following that meeting, there was some investigations done in relation to the facade, and what was the situation of the outcome of those investigations was that the removal of that paint revealed the brickwork was a very expensive exercise that at the moment, given the setting up of the business, they weren't in a position to undertake. Longer term, because they have bought the property, longer term their intention is to fully refurbish the facade, but at the moment they're not in a position to do that financially. So that's the intention of the applicants. But we say that the officer's report is supportive. We accept the conditions, and we seek the committee's support. Thank you. Sorry about my voice, I've got bronchitis.
Thank you for your presentation. And I will note the facade is heritage listed, so
Yes,
they will need
absolutely.
to have permission from council
Correct.
in order to do any
Yes.
works.
That's right, thank you.
I'll now turn to councillors.
Can I just ask you about
Yes.
the street trading? Obviously,
Oh yes, sorry, I didn't get to that.
The
Yes.
bottles will be sealed?
Yes, look, this matter was discussed at the consult meeting, and our clients agree that it isn't an appropriate location for street trading because it is a narrow footpath and it is on a bend of Lygon Street. Their intention is not to have street trading, even though it's dealt with under the local laws of the council, not the planning department. But there's no intention from our clients to have external trading outside.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from councillors for the applicant or the
Can I ask the officer one question?
Yes, Councillor
Am
Kavanagh.
I correct that the red line there indicates the only places where liquor can be consumed?
That's correct. Yep. The red line shows the service and consumption of liquor.
So if someone was to step out on the footpath and consume alcohol, they'd be in breach?
That's right.
Yep.
Thank you. Is there a recommendation from councillors in relation to this application?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Councillor
If I have a
Kavanagh?
seconder, I'll speak to it.
Councillor Thompson? Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh.
Look, first of all, thank you to the objectors for coming along, and the concerned applicant. The concerned hasn't actually officially objected but raised concerns, I understand that. And look, clearly that other venue is not operating properly, and I'm happy to, I'm sure other councillors will be, to continue to follow that up a bit more. I must say it's not in the northwest ward, so I wasn't aware of it till tonight, but I'm sure those in the northeast probably are. So look, I appreciate that, and obviously with that experience, you'd certainly wouldn't want to have another licensed venue close by. So I can understand all that, but in moving this, I do think that this is quite a different application. It is only in certain hours. It is not live music, and it is a different sort of, I would think, clientele that basically like to have a glass of wine and like to enjoy their wine. And I think, I do know the area very well. My uncle and aunt were actually the licensees of the Lyndhurst Hotel across the road for many, many years, and I spent most of my childhood working there and stacking the bottles and all that sort of thing. So I've known it for years. And look, I can understand that if that, I think this is a quite different venue to even that, to be honest. And I know that sometimes their patrons could get pretty rowdy at times too. So, but this is quite different, closing at 9 o'clock, and you'll notice that there was no question of that, of the applicant wasn't asking for additional time to that. So clearly that's agreeable to the applicant. Clearly hours of business are different, and as confident as you can be. If I had doubts, I wouldn't be moving it, but I'm very confident this will be something that will blend in with the area quite soon, and I think we won't have many problems at all. So for that reason, I'm moving the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Thompson?
Yes, thank you. So I'm in support of the resolution before us to grant a permit to this business, and concur with what Councillor Kavanagh has said. And also, I guess, just to highlight again, some of the issues that came out of it was the noise. I live close by to this shopping strip, and I know what comes out of Whole Lotta Love. It's not my kind of music either. So I do appreciate the impact that it does have on the social amenity and the living amenity of the residents. And as Councillor Kavanagh said, more than happy to take that on board and pursue that in other areas of council, not particularly pertinent to this permit. However, I believe, this venue is destined to be something quite different, and if I can just draw some of the objectors or the residents to page 65 of the agenda, and it gives a list of other venues in that shopping strip with the number of patrons, and there is another wine selling shop there, and they've got a capacity of 20 patrons. And this one is conditioned to have 30 patrons, so it's of the same kind of capacity. Whereas we see A Whole Lotta Love has a capacity of 100 with live music, and so those different elements to the business are quite stark. And I guess just speaking on the Lyndhurst Hotel, now we've noticed that that's now been sold to Dan Murphy, so that's no longer existent, and it's turned into more of a shop rather than consuming alcohol. And just to reiterate that certainly not trading on the streets in this particular area. So hopefully all the objectors' concerns are mitigated through what's been conditioned in the permit, and certainly sounds like it was a very good planning information discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Briefly as well, I do think most of the objections are because of the other venue that is there on the corner, and I certainly commit on behalf of the other councils as well to work together and see how we can actually make sure that we're mitigating some of the negative impacts of that, particularly around noise. It's difficult sometimes when you have operators who don't want to work with council, but we will do our best from our end to make sure that they do comply, because it's a real shame that experience is occurring in the area, and applications like this are getting objections because of another venue. I see this as quite a positive application. I think it would add to the area. It is a wine selling, tasting, bulk purchase business that closes at 9 o'clock. I think it's a welcome addition. I think it's significantly better to have a wine shop there than the existing application, which is a multi-storey development application, which I know residents also objected to. So I'm pleased that the new owner has decided to go towards a commercial wine premises as opposed to building a big development. So that's a positive. Hearing some of the concerns, I know very well that liquor licensing laws are very do police consumption on the street, particularly on footpaths. So you can see from the diagram there, they don't have a liquor license, they don't have permission to trade on the street. So the venue will have to manage that and make sure that alcohol is not consumed on the street. The other issue raised, which I think is very valid in regards to the heritage aspect of the facade and the parapet, I debated whether we should enforce through an agreement the restoration of that as part of this application. But I do think that after a few years, there would hopefully be goodwill by the owner to actually undertake that work, and any works undertaken will require an additional permit because it is a heritage facade. So at that point in time, we can police and grant a permit that is in line with best practice restoration for the facade and insist on that. And I'm sure when the time comes, that would be what occurs. I'm still in two minds whether we should include it perhaps sometime in the future, but I'm happy to leave it at this point in time, knowing that it's probably coming in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. I'll put Councillor Kavanagh's motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried, and I'll now pass to the officer to outline the legal process.
Thank you. Following the issue of the notice of decision to grant a planning permit, both the applicant and all objectors will receive a copy of the notice of decision to grant a planning permit. Objectors will have 21 days to seek review of Council's decision at BCAT. In the event that no review is lodged at BCAT, a planning permit will be issued. The applicant has 60 days from the date of issue of the notice of decision to grant a planning permit to review any conditions imposed on that permit. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll now move on to DED 4916, 356 to 360 Sydney Road, Brunswick. Amendment to Planning Permit MPS 2014-432.
This application considers an amendment to an existing permit which allows 5 stories at 356 to 360 Sydney Road in Brunswick. The site is located on the west side of Sydney Road within the Brunswick Activity Centre. It is occupied by a building that does not contribute to the heritage overlay. In terms of the history, Council granted a planning permit on the 5th of October 2015, which granted approval for a 5-storey building at 17.8 metres height, 18 dwellings, 20 car spaces, shop at ground floor, and waiver of loading bay and car parking. This proposal is an amendment, so Council's consideration is confined to the changes to the application, which include a 6-storey building height at, and I apologise, that should say 19.89 metres, which exceeds the design and development overlay, Schedule 18 guidance of 19 metres. It also considers an additional 3 dwellings and communal rooftop space. Council has received 4 objections and 1 submission to the application, including and raising matters with respect to height, scale, form and massing, overshadowing and waiver of loading bay facilities. Key considerations for Council are the impact of the proposal on the former church building to the immediate south. Plans were revised after advertising so that the visible south elevation presents a better articulated and resolved building, and these revised plans resolve Council's urban designer and heritage advisor concerns with the proposal. For the reasons set out at section 4 of the officer report, the amendment including the additional height is acceptable, and I also note that page 84 of the report responds to objector concerns, in particular concerns raised by residents at 334 Sydney Road, Brunswick, that shadows will fall onto their property prior to 9 a.m, which is the shadowing cast from the proposal is consistent with the planning scheme. The recommendation is that a notice of decision for an amended planning permit issue, subject to conditions outlined at page 72 of the officer's report.
Thank you. Are there any members of the gallery who wish to speak in relation to this application objecting? Yes, please come forward.
Thank you very much. My name is Sophie Emery and I represent the Committee of Management of the Owners Corporation of 337 to 341 Sydney. Secretary Peter Tregear, who's over. I'd like to start by stating that the Owners Corporation is by no means opposed to development per se. Indeed, we welcome sensible quality development in the area, and we believe that there are many positive aspects to the proposed development. We'd like to also stress, however, that the majority of our members are, like myself, owner-occupiers, and therefore Sydney Road is our home. Our principal concern is not around how we best invest in property so much as how we best invest in the community. Our priorities, therefore, inevitably will be somewhat different from the developer, who must, above all, try and maximise short-term financial gain above long-term attributes of the street. In this case, we can only presume the requested amendments are not to improve the building functionality or aesthetics, but to maximise short-term financial returns. We believe this should not take precedence over full consideration of their lasting impact. The addition of an extra storey is, in particular, we note, a contravention of the Design and Development Overlay, Schedule 18. The tabled document DED 4916 might describe this increase as minimal, but the impact is not. The 5-storey limit that has been the norm for buildings facing Sydney Road is thus exceeded. The building's impact on heritage streetscape, see Heritage Overlay number H, needs to also include reference to the fact that, as this committee will be well aware, VCAT has already overridden council planning objections to allow the building of unprecedented bulk and scale almost directly opposite this building, that being the Brunswick Heart development. The tabled street diagrams therefore give an inaccurate impression of the actual street view that will result, which is a transformed streetscape at the Albert Street end of Sydney Road, very much out of character with the street as a whole. Furthermore, the depictions of overshadowing at the equinox demonstrate that the impact of increase in height of the building and reduction in setback will have a significant negative impact on the amenity of the outdoor cafe area, the Brunswick Flour Mill. In particular, this is between 9 and 10 a.m. We note that no shadowing diagram covering, in particular, the winter solstice has been provided, which makes a complete appraisal of the impact of extra storey and setback encroachments on our property impossible to fully assess. Finally, we believe that the emerging build environment at this end of Sydney Road is already heading towards overdevelopment relative to the heritage and livability concerns. Will an approval of this planning permit amendment effectively signal to developers considering buildings on these remaining nearby possible development sites that they too should get a safe application approved and then later apply for a design code-breaking amendment, just as has happened here with the Brunswick and with the Brunswick Heart, in the knowledge that they can maximise profit at the expense of lasting form, character and the amenity of Sydney Road.
Thank you. Is there another speaker in relation to this application? Yes, please come forward.
My name is Sarif Gad. I own the shop next door, which is 362 to 366 Sydney Road. Although I am not objecting to the application, I do have some concerns. And as there is a joint wall between my property and their property, I am concerned about my wall while they are demolishing or building their building. As I have a tenant in my shop, that's a pharmacy. During the building process, I'm concerned about the disruption it might cause to this business. Also, if they can make it minimal. Also, if my wall is damaged, this will affect his business. If this occurs, it should be their responsibility to pay for the damage and the compensation for the disruption. I know this is not the council issue. It's probably the building company issue. I would also like a protection works notes from the owner. And if the council can get back to me about what it has been decided will be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another speaker? Yes, please come forward.
Like the previous speaker, I don't object to the development itself. I just asked that in the planning application, was there neighbours? The Sydney Road Community School considered? Has the developer offered anything to this underfunded and very useful school, a school that has schooled many young people that I have known? Have they considered in their building giving something back to the community by improving the facilities at that school? Will, for instance, are they paying a developer contribution? Could that developer contribution go to the school? I realise it's owned by the Education Department, it is a state school, but it is in need of funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another speaker who wishes to speak in relation to this application as an objector? No? Is there a representative for the applicant present?
Thank you for your time. My name's Chris Wilson from Wilcon Projects. I'm the applicant for the project. I guess I'd like to start with thanking Council for all the efforts I've gone to date. We've worked with Council since December the 15th in terms of coming up to a proposal which we believe is considerate of Sydney Road and also its interface and with surrounding properties and particularly the church. We'd like to table that we accept all conditions as outlined in the proposed notice of decision to grant a planning permit, and we'd happily accept all of those. With respect to the proposal, we submit the design displays a very considerate interface to the church. I'll refer you to the page 116 or 120 of the agenda. You've already been taken through the 3D elevations. The building, when viewed from the south, is being stepped back and treated so that it is a visually recessive built form compared to the church. So the church remains as the, I guess, the want of a better word, the hero point of the streetscape. When viewed from the north, also the combination of the setbacks of the building allows the views to the church to remain, with the spire being continued to be the dominant viewing from the north southwards. We note that the design and development overlay does talk about a height limit of 19. We don't shy away from the fact that there is a small increase of it's 0.89 metres. We believe that's entirely appropriate in this outcome. The additional floor is recessive. It's well set back from the lower floors and also well set back from the property boundaries, resulting in that additional floor being a visually recessive element, and you can see that in the 3D elevations. We also note the conditions, as I've mentioned before, we do accept them. There have been some changes which have resulted in a much greater compliance with the Moreland Apartment Design Code, and we welcome those changes from Council. With respect to the comments that we've heard from the three submitters tonight, our thoughts are as follows. Concerns with respect to heritage, Council's Heritage Advisor has supported the proposal. We've been very considerate of the interface with the church, and we believe it's entirely appropriate. With respect to the concerns with overshadowing, I'd refer to page 96 of the agenda, which clearly outlines the existing shadow as per the approved planning permit. I think we all need to be cognizant of that fact. There's an approved planning permit on this site, and we're seeking an additional upper level, but the additional overshadowing is actually lesser than what's currently approved in the scheme. So we strongly submit that the properties opposite Sydney Road from this proposal are not impacted by this development. With respect to the concerns of the immediately adjoining property to the north, we note the concerns, we hear them, we've spoken with the submitter. These matters are best dealt with in the building regulations. Once again, there's an existing development approval on the site, so if be it the previous approval or this current, we still have to respond to the adjoining property and ensure that they're not impacted. So there's no concern from there, and we've already outlined that in discussions with the owner to the north. So I guess in summary, the amendments, in our opinion, have resulted in a far greater outcome for the future occupants of these apartments. The increase in floor area is not a quick opportunistic grab for additional floor area. It's to improve the development scheme which was there. The previous apartments were, I wasn't involved in the previous application, so I'm happy to say it, poorly designed. We used the same architects again, and we went back to the drawing board and gave them the opportunity to fix previous errors, not errors, but previous shortcomings of the development. So we respectfully request that Council issues the notice of decision as per the officer recommendation. We have highly respected the advice and feedback given throughout the process, and we've quite enjoyed the process. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I've just got a couple of questions here for
me?
the applicant. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just a bit cold at the moment.
No worries, that's fine. It's the season for it. So the neighbour talked about a protection works notice and the reassurance about the wall being protected and not disturbed in the business and everything. So previously we've talked about construction management plans for sites and whether that had been discussed at the planning and the information discussion and whether you're amenable to that.
Look, a construction management plan hasn't been discussed, and it, from my review of the condition, hasn't been raised.
Yeah.
Preference would be that it would be dealt with in the appropriate location, being the building regulations. A construction management plan is good, and we'd be happy for that condition to be inserted in there.
As part of this planning permit tonight. Okay.
I'm not shying away from it. We have to do it.
Yeah. You have to do it anyway. So whether it's now with this planning permit to appease or help the neighbour.
Yeah. So, but that construction management plan will heavily rely upon the guidance of the building regulations.
Yes.
So it'll just be covered off in the planning permit as well as the building regs. So we have to do it no matter what.
Okay. Yep. Great. Thank you. I think that was all from me.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kavanagh?
Yeah. You mentioned that this is an improved application to the previous one.
Yes.
You fixed up some things that you saw as shortcomings. Why did you see the need to increase the height in that process, though? Wouldn't it have been good just to fix the shortcomings without increasing the height?
Well, the current proposal wasn't fulfilling the opportunities which the Design and Development Overlay 18 actually envisages for this area. It was, in my mind, an underdevelopment of the area. The apartments were constrained in terms of their design and layout. We have increased in height, but been respectful of the DDO 18 and been heavily guided by Council's vision for this area, being a 19-metre proposed height.
And this, tell me, right, this application has a rooftop area, doesn't it?
No, so that's one thing that I should have highlighted on in terms of the improvements for the internal amenity. The rooftop area is actually on the podium, so you can see. Sorry to make you turn around, but obviously Sydney Road, two-storey podium. That area there where the cursor is on at the moment is an outdoor living area, which is obviously specific for the owners of the apartments. So that's been a significant improvement on top of the top of the previous scheme.
So the larger part up there, this isn't rooftop area here?
No, so you may have noticed that there is a couple of sets of different 3D elevations.
Yeah.
The footprint is effectively quite similar between the two. That is a design treatment, so that's the vertical fins which the officers referred to earlier, and that is to provide that facade with some interest because it is obviously very visible due to the church's setback, but it'll also it does sit back from the main prominence of the church.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Thompson, yes?
Just in terms, thanks for hanging around. So just in terms of the 900 mil over the height, 19 to 19.89. Could you envisage that you could make up that deficit by rejigging some of the other parts of the development? Because we're talking.
In short, no. The access is from the rear. We have a sub-basement to include things like storage, etc. So there's no opportunity to drop any further down because you can't actually design a basement for vehicles on a site such as this with the access. So the opportunity to go down isn't there, and then the opportunity to, I guess what you're alluding to is, can you take a little bit from each floor plate?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
And we're on the cusp of that at the moment, so we're fairly constrained with what we've got. There's no fat to trim bits out. But I'll just reiterate that that upper floor, as you can see in that image, and I'm happy for us to scan through some more, it is well set back from floor plates below, so that when you're actually at the street, standing there, looking up, not going to be seeing it. It's a very recessive element, so you can look from both directions straight on at the back. That upper floor, yes, we're going over that magic 19 metres, but when you combine the actual design and the intent of that overlay, we're saying that it's actually a good outcome and that it's not going to impact any parties.
Thank you. Okay. If there's no further questions,
I might just a quick one, and I'm sure it's in the report, but
for me still.
Yeah, yourself or the officers, but you'll be able to answer it. Can you just quickly take us through the difference between the current permit and this amendment in regards to additional dwellings, if there are any, and also the setbacks?
Who'd love to go first, Lauren?
Or
So at page 77, it details the changes between the proposed amendment and the approved building. And this amendment proposes 3 additional dwellings. And then it also seeks some changes. So dwellings fronting Sydney Road have reduced setbacks, located 12.5 to 14 metres from the street, with the balconies set back 11 metres from the street, and the 6-storey is set back between 14 and 16 metres from Sydney Road, with the balcony set back 12.5 metres from Sydney Road.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'd just like to touch on just the point that you raised before, Councillor Thompson. So, in terms of that difference of that 89 centimetres, the real test should be if that 89 centimetres is going to impact anyone. And I think the test is well and truly shown in the plans and the officer's report, which shows that the actual overshadowing impacts are actually dramatically less than the current scheme. So if you're looking at it from a first principle point, is there a greater impact by going up that height? Then not compared to the current scheme that's approved. Sorry
Thank
for
you.
putting further
No,
submissions
that's
in.
fine.
All done?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion from Councillor Thompson?
I'd like to move the recommendations in the report from page 72 to 76 with an additional point.
Yes.
So an additional point 26, that a construction management plan be part of the permit before it's to the approval of the building authority or the responsible authority, or happy to take further words in how to get that actioned appropriately, but it's mainly to get a construction management plan issued as part of the permit before any works can be conducted.
Thank you.
If I have a second, I'll speak to the...
Do we have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second. Yeah.
Councillor Kavanagh? Councillor Thompson?
Okay, thank you. So first I would like to thank the objectors who have come tonight and raised their concerns about this. It's always a difficult thing, especially when there's a building of such magnitude. And I'd just like to say that given the location of it and its proximity along Sydney Road, and it's an activity centre, part of the Brunswick Activity Centre, it's a place where we're going to see some increased development. I note that it is an increase of 3 dwellings, and just in speaking to some of the concerns, particularly around the overshadowing, do we have the overshadowing image? Just to sort of highlight that, because it's a bit confusing in the report how that comes across, because there's a previous planning application that was for this site, which brought the building closer to Sydney Road, so the impact of overshadowing was much greater than what's now. And I believe the redesign that we have before us is a lot better in that respect. I think in the agenda it shows as well that the dashed line is the current project, and that doesn't, and it's at the Equinox. It's at the car parking, the on-street car parking.
Correct.
So it doesn't actually go onto the footpath at all. And just to note that in the planning scheme that when we're looking at overshadowing, it is taken from the equinox. I completely understand that Tuesday we had the winter solstice. So having that, it could have been, the planning scheme doesn't recognise overshadowing from the solstice when it has the most impact, and I completely...
Before 9 a.m. either, which is when you're actually home.
Yes, okay, so there's bounds within the planning scheme that restrict that kind of thing, so the equinox and, the 9 till 3. So certainly hear that, but with this new development, I think it's sort of done its best it can given the site and on Sydney Road. And also I'd like to just highlight a couple of things about the application, that the front wall, so the wall that'll be right on the boundary line of Sydney Road, so the street wall, in the development overlay it's allowed to be at 11 metres, but this current permit is at 8.3, so it's actually lessening that front impact. And also just from the setback, so from that next level, the setback on the actual DDO, on the design overlay, it's supposed to be set back to 3 to 5 metres, but this design actually is set back 12 to 16 metres. So it's actually exceeding those parts of the design development overlay, which is why I think it is mitigating its impact, like from the visual perspective. And we can see here next to the church, the community school does have that prominence because the upper part of the design is so well set back. So these are the things that I've been looking at while assessing this application, because certainly I certainly see that, 900 mils, and if we could get that within the DDO, I feel that all the other things that have complied within this application or even exceeded deserves that this permit can be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kavanagh?
Just briefly, yes, I'm seconding the motion. I don't particularly like the application, although I do think that the applicant made a fair point in that they currently have a planning permit, and the planning permit they have, if that was to be put in, if that was to be begun construction, then I think this is a superior one to that. Yes, it is higher than the structure plan by some 89 centimetres, and normally most people who come to these meetings will know I won't vote against ones that are above the structure plan, but the difference here is that if this was refused and then refused at VCAT, they would then swing back to their original application, which I think is actually an inferior application to this one. Right? And particularly for the effect on the Sydney Road Community School, I have moved it back across at that point. The objector made the right point about the autumn and, as Councillor Thompson mentioned, the autumn and spring equinox rather than the winter solstice. We have argued that case. We have put forward submissions to the state government on that, but we've had no avail on that. And you're right, the 9 a.m. and the 3 p.m. is also unsatisfactory as well. So don't particularly like the application, to be honest, but in remembering that they already have a live permit, I'm willing to support this application because I do think it's an improvement on what they already have.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Tapnos, do you wish to speak?
Okay, I'll speak briefly. I have a slightly different view, and it's a difficult one to come to because there are so many positives in the application, particularly the setbacks. But I just don't understand why we can't have good quality design from the start whilst it maintains the heights of the DDO. So I just don't understand why that doesn't occur. So I understand there might have been shortcomings in the previous application, and this might be a better one, but I just think as a council we ought to be putting the message out there that we expect good quality applications. We expect the departments to adhere to our apartment design code and be actually good quality apartments and fit within the heights and structures which we have determined in our structure plans and our DDO. So it's only an additional fee, sure. It's only an additional less than a metre, sure, but it doesn't comply from where I sit. So I've been consistent in not supporting these applications because of that, and I would like to continue to show that consistency. Although this is only a slight modifications, if we start allowing slight modifications all the time, we end up with our DDO becoming completely irrelevant. So I do acknowledge that a lot of good work's been done, sure, and I think that this area, in particular, being to one of the biggest landmarks in Brunswick, does need those setbacks and being next to a school. It really does. So I'm not willing to give additional credit for these setbacks because I do think you cannot build beyond what's being proposed. You cannot build and overshadow the school. You cannot build and overshadow the heritage building in the church. So I don't give extra credits for that. I'm struggling to see why an extra story is required.
Thank you, Councillor Tapnos.
Please just ask. Oh, I just want to ask a question actually. If I
Sure, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. So just in speaking to the developer contributions plan that was brought up, it's noted in the report that, on page 79, that a condition is included in the recommendation in relation to this, and that the community infrastructure levy component of that developer contributions plan will be applicable during the building permit. I was just wanting to ask officers, do you know if there's any way that can be specifically allocated to the school, or is it something?
I can answer it, but I'm sure the officer can.
There's an approved list that the community infrastructure levy, those funds go towards. So any funds arising out of this permit cannot be directed other than what's specified in that list.
And just for that list is predominantly just infrastructure, drainage, footpaths, roads, basic infrastructure for the suburb.
Thank you. Thanks. I'd just like to note a few points as well before we put this to the vote. Now, an increase in height is a slippery slope, and for these reasons, I will echo the sentiments of Councillor Tapanos as well. If we go over the height here, it's going to continue. We've seen VCAT argue against council on this very point to say, we've already gone over the height here, what's the problem with going over the height further down? It's just a few more metres. It's just another story. And it continues. We've got these design development overlays in place for a particular reason, and it's because council wants to see a particular type of development down these streets. It's what we've come to with consultation with the community, and it's what I believe we should enforce. And I understand there's been concessions made, but the concessions should fit into what council wants to see, and the generous concessions should still also be conceded to, fitting within the height parameters that we've set. And it's for those reasons that I'm going to vote against this. So I'll put Councillor Kavanagh's motion to, Councillor Thompson's motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? And I'll need to use my casting vote on this, and I will vote against it. So I declare that not carried.
In that case, I'll move that Moreland Civic Council, that a refusal to grant planning permit application MPS 2014-432A be issued for the use and development of a 6-storey building containing a shop and 21 dwellings, a reduction in the car park requirements, a waiver of the loading and unloading of vehicle requirements, and the demolition of the existing building at 356-360 Sydney Road, Brunswick, and 356-360 Sydney Road, Brunswick, subject to the following grounds of refusal. The proposal exceeds the maximum height of 19 metres as specified in the proposed design and development overlay, Schedule 18, DDO 18, and that forms part of the Amendment 1C, C134 to the Moreland Planning Scheme adopted by Council.
Thank you, Councillor.
Second now.
Seconded by Councillor Kavanagh.
I think the debate has already been had. I think Council is sending a loud and clear message that we want good quality design and we want it to stay within our DDO, and I think that's fair enough.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. I'll put. Sure.
Just to explain, because obviously I voted for the other application and now I'm seconding this, but obviously the other one has been refused, and so therefore we default to this position, and that suits me fine too. I'm satisfied that the other one was fairly voted on, and that's how it is.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Thompson, yes?
Just quickly, thank you. I'd like to share the sentiments of Councillor Kavanagh, because it is a difficult decision to make when you're faced with a DDO and a non-compliant permit. And given the result of the previous resolution, I'll be supporting this amendment.
Thank you. I'll put Councillor Tapanos's amendment to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried, and I'll now pass to the officer to outline the legal process from here.
Thank you. The Urban Planning Committee has decided to issue a refusal to grant an amended planning permit for 356 to 360 Sydney Road, Brunswick, subject to the grounds contained within the alternative motion. Following the issue of the refusal to grant an amended planning permit, both the applicant and objectors will receive a copy of the refusal. The applicant then has 60 days to review Council's decision at VCAT. It is noted that all objectors will be served a copy of review by the permit applicant and can join as a party to those proceedings.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the last application for this evening, which is Champ Street, Coburg, Pentridge B Division, and it's a request to extend the planning permit application 2009-1141, the 18-storey residential building. And when the officer's ready, she'll give an outline of the application.
So Council has received an application to extend planning permit number 2009/1141. Up on the screen is the location of the building that is approved by that permit, and the planning permit allows construction of a 19-storey building. The permit was issued by the Minister when the state government was the responsible authority for Pentridge. Council received this request to extend the permit as a consequence of the site being within new ownership. Council must consider whether the planning provisions have changed, which would mean there is a probability that the permit would not be issued should a fresh application be made. The test set out in case law for the decision maker to consider numbered on the screen, points 1 through to 8, and as detailed in the officer report. The recommendation is to grant an extension of time request. I also note that as this request is to extend a planning permit, advertising of the proposal is not required or any statutory referrals as outlined at page 127 of the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the gallery who wish to speak objecting to this application? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening again. Francesco Timpano, local resident and ratepayer. Good evening, councillors. I, along with many other members of the Pentridge Action Heritage Group, lodged an objection to the 19-storey application, and I note this is dealing with the 18-storey application, not application permit. Okay. So I only became aware of this when I came here. Council should not approve this application. My objection is on the public record regarding the 19-storey one, and it'll be much the same issues for the 18-storey one, and many others, particularly those in the Pentridge Heritage Group. And I'm amazed, given all those objections, that the council officer's recommendation. I assume that was not taken into account. This application is some 7 years old. 7 years old. And time and expectations have moved on. This is council's opportunity to undo a bad mistake, a very bad mistake. I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers in relation to this application who wish to object? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening again. I'm a bit confused about this. Basically because I've recently been involved, as opposed to the Pentridge Community Action Group, also with the resident community group that Shea are operating, of which you have a representative that came to the last meeting, Michael Wade. Now, during that meeting, we did a walkthrough of the plan, and I just have a question about this plan was for a high-rise multiple dwelling development. Now, would that incorporate a motel or hotel? Would that be considered a part of a high-rise multiple dwelling? Because that was pointed out that this site was for the site of a motel. So that is incorporated. I'm just asking that question first up because that would seem to me that there might be some changes afoot that, since making an application for an apartment block and it changes into a completely different scenario. I throw that up there. Anyway, the second thing is I noticed that the site was rezoned in your page 129 of the Urban Planning Committee meeting minutes. You referred to there that about the exception for precincts 9 and 10 in regard to a 6 to 10 storey height limit. So I just reflect on what you rejected in the previous application and just smacks of what the hell are we doing approving 90-storey. Now, I know that you didn't approve it. In fact, the Minister for Planning at the time approved it. Now, when I'm coming to page 131 of your intervening of circumstances bearing upon the grant or refusal, it states there that the council made a request to the Planning Minister on the 23rd of March. He replied with, well, I'm not doing nothing. And he further advised that council, as the responsible authority, is best placed to undertake a review of the master plans. So does that mean that he's throwing it back to you? A rhetorical question, because that would seem to indicate that saying, well, we're not going to review them, but it doesn't stop you from reviewing them. Now, if you review them, because it says in the next line, is in the absence of an imminent review of the master plans. Well, the first thing is, I think that's what quite strongly been said, is that a lot of this master plan was not done with dubious community consultation, if any. And so this is where we have an opportunity to say, well, okay, thanks very much, Planning Minister Madden and whoever else was involved. But we've moved on since then. This application, as my previous speaker said, is somewhat dated. Now we have an opportunity to turn that around and say, look, let's review some of these things. Now, even if I look at a 10-storey height building smack over the corner of that particular wall, I have significant concerns. Now, I'm trying to, I suppose, approach this from two tacks. I'm looking at the resident community group within Shire and trying to say, look, you know, we have some serious problems with the way that heritage is being treated here. And it'd be interesting to see if the developer, the director of Shire, or one of the directors of Shire, who's established themselves in Toorak now, it'd be nice to see them try and put a 20-storey building there and see how they respond. But aside from the jokes, there's some points in here in terms of going on in page 131 regarding the probability of a permit issuing should a fresh application be made. There's a statement there that says the proposal was originally considered by the Minister for Planning as being consistent with the Pentridge-Coburg Design Guidelines and Master Plan, which I think we reject, first up. And the second point there is that although the building height varies from that depicted in the Master Plan and Activity Centre Zone, i.e. 10 to 19, the height is not mandatory, and the original assessment of the application determined that the height was appropriate in both the strategic and physical context. Reject. Absolutely reject. So I believe there's enough grounds on that for us to be able to say, look, you know, this is not on.
I'm conscious of the time, so if you could wind up.
Just finally, the proposal is not prohibited under any clause of the current Moreland planning scheme on page 132, because no significant inconsistencies in strategic policy have been identified. Well, once again, this is not, it can't be true. I mean, the bluestone wall destruction is absolutely criminal. And this proposal, if you're looking at it, is another 2 holes in the bluestone wall. Three or four actually, just for this corner alone. Now, I'm going to try and work with the resident community group within Shire to get them to revisit at least the Champ Street side of that. I've probably got Buckley's and none, but, you know, I think we've got to preserve something of this heritage. And if we can keep what's currently intact between the corner tower on Champ Street, Pentridge Boulevard, right down to the next tower, which includes the main office building, is currently all intact, pristine, beautiful, original, right? But then, of course, they slash through it to make way for the road. Okay, we've got to have development, we've got to accept that, but that's where I would draw the line.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question before the resident goes? Because, hello, do you mind coming back? I think I'll pose a question to you because living in the area, you might know it better.
Yeah.
So there is already an existing opening that's occurred there. That is for the road, that your understanding? And
have you been down Champ Street lately?
Yeah. There's a few.
Yeah, so
but
right
the one
opposite
specific opposite to this side, that is for the road? Is that your understanding, or is that has already been
this
made in
particular
anticipation?
planning, do you mean, referring to this
Yeah,
building?
this planning application.
The extra holes in the wall are probably to service this motel slash... There's on Champ Street itself, and they've also got to negotiate the way through the heritage overlay on the gum trees, the red gum trees and stuff. So they've got it. I don't know how they're going to do that really, but anyway. So they're on that corner just near the end of Pentridge Boulevard, it shows it on page. Sorry, I had it there a minute ago. There's a good cutout drawing on page 145. So you can see on page 145 how there's this little excuse for a road. It may be even like an opportunity. I don't know what it's for. I'll find out the resident community group, but maybe it's for taxis as well or something. Because if you're going to have a motel, you're going to have serious traffic issues with people being dropped off and stuff like that. So so you can see there that one of them, they've done these like slanted wall aspects.
Yeah.
Where now I actually approve of that. If you're going to bust in the wall, then let's at least do it some kind of artistically and nice, and so we can see that it was a preserved wall at one time. But my point in this section is that certainly on Champ Street, that we should try and keep that pristine altogether. And look, the other side in Pentridge Boulevard has been busted to bits, so you may as well take all the assault on that side and try and leave a section. That's my own feeling. But I'm sorry, I don't know if I really answered your question.
No, I think you did, yes, certainly. Because I just saw the openings there and I was wondering whether they'd done those in
Most of the
anticipation.
openings that they've done now are further south, so it's further north. So they've done the two openings for the two major roads, Road D and Road B, I think it is. So that's separate. But if you look at from this section, and once again, we're just looking at one little building here and one little corner. And it doesn't take into, when you look at the big master plan, it's a bit horrific.
Yeah. Are there any further speakers in relation to this? Yes?
I'd just like to say there's another 19-storey building in Pentridge we didn't know about. This one's on the top of the rise, this one's not on the downslope like the other one. This is going to have a bigger impact on Coburg than the other one. People don't know about it. We just picked it up in the agenda just a few days ago. So we've had a little time to look at it in great detail. I see it's got one and two bedroom dwellings. It hasn't got anything for families whatsoever. The permit, as Francesco said, is 7 years old already. The new owners have been in possession for 3 years. In the report, this was said to be not an example of warehousing, but I'm starting to think it is. It's right on the cusp of warehousing. A condition that I thought might be out of date is condition 25, the environmental sustainability. It talks about the report dating from 2009, which is now nearly 7 years old, valid, the owners in reference, and I don't believe they are now. It says to identify environmental measures, implement them into the design, but there's no standard mentioned, and I'm just a bit worried that it's a very lax type of condition, and probably if we looked at the other conditions, we'd find that they were similarly not as tight as we would do today. Right today. So, I think there are grounds to say no to this.
Thank you. Are there any further objectors who wish to speak? Is there a representative for the applicant present at all? No? Okay. Are there any further questions or discussions from councillors in relation to this? Is there a
move?
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Tapanos?
I'm going to move an alternative, which I think is going to come to no surprise to anyone in the public gallery. That the request to extend planning permit 2009 1141 be refused on the following grounds. A, there are deficiencies with the development, which means that there is a low likelihood of a permit being issued if a fresh application were made. These include A, the development is within or forms a part of a site identified as having primary heritage significance, including a panopticon, airing yards, I think that should be, not exercise yards, and does not include adaptive reuse of B division. This is inconsistent with the following built form objectives, that's section 2 of the schedule to the activity centre zone. I think it's on the wall. Councillors want me to continue reading this, or?
I think for the benefit of the gallery.
Which is A, to encourage development to respond to the character of significant heritage buildings in the heritage overlay, and B, to retain and activate heritage buildings and to complement the retaining existing fabric with complementary architecture in dense urban settings. And B, the development does not provide for adaptable or visitable housing. C, the height of the building exceeds the height depicted in the Precinct 9 map level 1. And 2, the proposal does not respond to the seriously entertained Amendment C142 to the Moreland Planning Scheme, which proposes to introduce the Moreland Apartment Design Code for reasons of the following. A, not all balconies achieve the requisite minimum area and dimensions required by Clause D to 5 private open space.
Sure. And Councillor Thompson is seconding Councillor Tapanos's
Yes.
alternate.
Thank you. This is my first opportunity. I've actually waited a long time to actually have this come up to council. On my time, we haven't dealt with a master plan. We haven't dealt with planning permits. This is the first opportunity we get to have an opinion about a 19-storey building in Pentridge. It is no surprise that I'm proposing that we do not approve this. The design, the master plan, is not our master plan. It's not the community's master plan. We've been vocal on council in trying to have it reviewed, and we are having that discussion with the Minister at the moment, and we may take him up on his offer to initiate a review ourselves, and I'm sure that that will probably be the subject of the next council meeting. So in assessing whether this warrants an extension, I say the planning scheme has changed. There was a change, albeit not the change we wanted to see. It decreased the heights slightly, I think to 16 or so, but there was a change. So I think that allows us to say no. Apart from that, and what is more significant than that master plan changes, that we are saying, the council is saying, the community is saying, the residents are saying, we don't agree with that, we want a review. And until that review occurs, we shouldn't be approving this permit extension. It is not our plan, it is not the plan we want to see. Why are we approving something that was issued 6 or 7 years ago if it's not in accordance with the views of our community? So I think we're on good grounds to say no to this planning permit extension, and I think that we have other things as well which we need to raise. The discovery of the panopticons for me is a bit of a game changer. I know this one is not the really well preserved one that's higher up in the site, but nonetheless it should still be preserved. That in itself should be a reason why this permit should be allowed to lapse, and a new permit which is more sympathetic to the panopticon, to the heritage walls, to the heritage fabric in the site be developed, and one that is in line with the heights the community wants to see. Not 16, certainly not 19. So I urge councillors to send a strong message tonight that this is not acceptable, send a message that we will be reviewing this, send a message that we want to have a say in how Pentridge develops, and our vision is not this.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I'd just like to support Councillor Tapanos's alternative motion to refuse the extension of this planning permit, and echo all the sentiments that Councillor Tapanos has highlighted in speaking to the alternative motion, and also just to once again thank the community for taking part in the whole Pentridge site and what it means to you at a very local level. And so when I was reading this report, I was asking the exact same questions, like this is the perfect opportunity. If there's a permit on this side and they're wanting to extend a permit that we don't really want, this is a perfect opportunity for council to say no. Let's start afresh. Let's bring a new permit in and see if we can do something a bit more in line with community and council visions of the area. Of course, now we anticipate this might go to VCAT, and ultimately the decision will be made in VCAT. But I think we as council have done our good decision. Well, hopefully we will if we support this alternative motion, and then it will be in the hands of VCAT. But as council and as Councillor Tapanos has highlighted, this is certainly not a kind of permit that we would want in our Pentridge division. So, yeah, I commend this alternative motion to the rest.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kavanagh?
Yeah, well done, Councillor. Yeah, I'm also speaking in favour of the alternative motion, and I think Councillor Tapanos put it very well, actually, very eloquently spoken. Look, the fact is that Council has been, for much of the process, been shut out of this process. We were involved at the very beginning when I first got elected with the original in 2004. We've had 3 owners in that time. That was the Bremer Group, and we were involved at that stage, and then they got impatient and went to the Minister. And then, you know, I remember we had them at a issues and discussion workshop in early 2005, and it looked like we were going to have a good relationship in, you know, and then it was sort of like taken straight away from us. And unfortunately, the Kodak site was taken at the same time too. The one thing about the Kodak site, which was pleasing, and I know that's a bit off the track, but at least a lot of work had been done with council officers, and for the most part, they implemented those things at the Kodak site. And that's why I think we have a far better development up there than what we've got at Pentridge. Whereas at Pentridge, they just ignored all the work that had been done before and just got the biggest developments that they could possibly get with the Minister. And can I particularly congratulate the gentleman who's on the working group, because you're actually prepared to get in there with the developers and work from the inside. So I think that's a really good thing, and I congratulate you on doing that. Yeah, we've had the Grammar Group, we've had Ballard, and now we've got Shea Group. And really, council has basically been shut out. And it's a real indictment of one level of government being shut out by another level of government, pretty much. And by both sides. We were shut out when Minister Madden was the Minister, and we were shut out when Minister Guy was the Minister. And so on both sides of politics, we've been shut out of the process. And I think it is an opportunity to say quite loudly and clearly to the new owners, who I must say, on a one-to-one level, they've been reasonable to deal with since they've taken over. They actually had a tour of the site and saw the, I always say the word incorrectly, Pentagon, I always say Pentagon, but it's not Pentagon. I always mathematics coming out of me. But we had a view of that, and you know, it was extremely impressive. You know, and it would be, you know, it does just give one more aspect as what's been lost by previous developments, and both in the village and in what was called the Piazza, and now the Quarter. So yeah, I'm happy to support this alternative recommendation by Councillor Tapanos and seconded by Councillor Thompson, and you know, we'll fight the good fight at BK.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. I'll put Councillor Tapanos's alternative motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried, and I'll now pass to the officer for the legal process from here.
Thank you. The Urban Planning Committee has decided to refuse the request for an extension to Planning Permit 2009/1141. Following the issue of Council's refusal, the applicant will be advised of Council's decision, and then the applicant has an opportunity to seek a review of Council's decision at the tribunal. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the gallery for attending this evening, and thank you to our audience at home or wherever you may be for watching the Urban Planning Committee tonight. Have a good evening. I declare the Urban Planning Committee closed. Thank you.